In the world's greatest country, in its most pivotal state, lies Pennsylvania's Lehigh Valley, an economic hub that's as vibrant as it is ideologically eclectic. Its just over 700,000 residents will play a critical role in deciding the course of American leadership and thereby the world. Who are the thinkers, workers, and leaders that will decide our collective fate? Join me, Moshe Kurtz, as I walk through the valley and find out. Thank you, my friends, for joining me today as I walk through the valley with Ms. Jess Denke, the head librarian and co-director of the Muhlenberg College Inside Out Prison Exchange Program. It is wonderful to have you here on the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Rabbi.
And I understand that it is the end of the semester at Muhlenberg College where we are sitting right now, but they still got you working right now.
Yeah, all summer, the library keeps working. Librarians are working hard.
Wow, well, I appreciate you taking some of your break time to sit down in order to do this interview together. And I'm very interested in what we just talked about, the Inside Out Prison Exchange Program. That doesn't sound like something that librarians typically do, but maybe you'll smash that stereotype for me. Do you want to tell us about the program?
Yeah, I would love to. The Inside Out Prison Exchange Program was started at Temple University by a social work professor who was going and taking students to what was then Graterford and is now Phoenix Prison in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. And at the time, they were doing a day-long panel with people who were incarcerated. And the students went and attended the panel and heard about the experiences of people who were in that situation, often serving life sentences.
Oh, wow.
And over the course of years of doing that kind of program, the guys on the inside said, hey, why don't you bring the students for a semester and we'll engage in a classroom environment where it's a dialogue back and forth.
So the classroom, a college class, will take place inside the prison walls.
Inside the prison walls. So yes, we were trained at Temple University in this pedagogy where we take traditionally enrolled college students at Muhlenberg College. We take them to the Lehigh County Jail, and we teach them a college class alongside the same number of incarcerated students.
Amazing. So what kind of courses are being offered inside a jail?
So my colleague, Dr. Kate Richmond, started this program in 2017 in Lehigh County, and I joined her the next year. So I've been involved for 9 years. We initially were just teaching a class on mass incarceration. It's a survey. We study the history of incarceration in the United States, and its development out of racism and Jim Crow. Mm-hmm. We study mental health and addiction. We study the deinstitutionalization of mental health services in the United States and how that has led to increased in prison populations. And we also study the school-to-prison pipeline. So essentially... The
school-to-prison pipeline. Can you just break that down for a moment? Usually schools aren't trying to send their students to prison. So what's the pipeline?
Yeah, the pipeline is such that communities that have less social emotional resources instead often invest in essentially officers to, what do they call them these days? I'm blanking on
some sort of school safety patrol or
school safety resource officers.
Something like that. They figure out how to package it in the right terminology.
Yeah. Anyway, the students who have interactions with law enforcement, often through those school resource officers, those interactions are what lead them have more common touch points with the system of justice in the United States. So essentially, our ability to keep the youth out of involvement in the justice system will keep adults as off.
Well, that's really important. And actually, in a previous episode on the podcast, we had the Allentown School District Superintendent CEO, Dr. Carol D. Burks, on the show.
Yeah.
And we were talking about, I talked about with her and with her team, off recording as well, the partnerships that they are cultivating with the Allentown Police Department, and part of the chaplain unit for the Allentown Police Department. So I hear on their end how they're trying to build bridges with the school district and with those kids as well. And they have these programs where they're trying to cultivate a positive relationship and community partnership. So it's not just like you have law enforcement coming in and seeing how can we just throw these kids into jail and throw them away for life.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I also recognize that there are other nonprofits like Century Promise or Promise Neighborhoods that are both doing like support services for students in Allentown School District, because the school district does have less resources than many of our surrounding districts. And things
right, there's a difference between an inner city school district like Allentown versus right next door we have the Parkland School District, and it's like night and day, the distinctions between just culturally but socioeconomically as well.
Yeah.
Huge distinction between them.
Yeah. So sometimes having those partnerships allows students to see the opportunities that are available to them in a different way.
Absolutely. Now, I want to just go back to the Inside Out program.
Yeah.
I'm
sorry. Oh, yeah. I didn't even finish answering your second question.
Oh, please.
Which was what classes we're offering. So the survey on mass incarceration that Kate and I have been teaching for many, many years is no longer the only class that we're offering inside the Lehigh County Jail.
Right.
Through some additional grant funding, we've trained 17 additional faculty members. And so the program is growing. This past semester, we had a class that was on the literature and film of prisons that was being taught. And we've taught a prison journalism class also.
Wait, so you're in the prison and you're teaching the inmates, is that the right term? Or
so we say students who are incarcerated. The word inmate essentially defines someone based on the worst thing that they've ever done in their life. So we like to center the humanity of the
person first language.
Yeah.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. So these students who are incarcerated, so you're teaching them about the kind of academic background of incarceration. And it's interesting because you could have these students who are coming to a college, and look, even at Muhlenberg, I'm sure there's different backgrounds that kids come from, but there's definitely a certain part of the student population is coming from a more, I guess what you might call privileged, economically privileged background. So it's one thing to learn about these things theoretically in your classroom with the nice grassy fields outside and all the amenities, but it's another thing to actually, show, don't tell.
Exactly.
That's what I learned in my English writing 101 class when I was in college. Show, don't tell. That's the one thing I remember from it.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. I think the experiences that the students who are incarcerated bring to our classroom is in part what makes this such a transformative learning opportunity.
Right. So do me a favor, take me into the classroom. What's the dynamic like? And what I'm curious is, how do we ensure that, because I can tell that you're sincerely concerned with the dignity of these students who are incarcerated, how do you ensure that they don't just feel like they are specimens being used for a college course, but that it's a dignified experience? And how do the college students from Muhlenberg, how do they ensure that that's actually the dynamic?
Yeah, so every student who participates in the program is interviewed, where we're very explicit about our aims for the program. The Muhlenberg students are told that this is not an opportunity to study another community, but to engage in the course as co-students, co-participants. Similarly, I meet with my students who are incarcerated and introduce myself and my aims. What is really, I think, impactful for them is to hear that, I'm an abolitionist. I don't even really want the jail to exist. But I believe that in order for that to happen, we have to strategize about ways to make our community better. And their voice is the one that I think is most important in that, making that happen. And so we really highlight to our incarcerated community members how important the evidence of their experiences is in this work.
Now, I wasn't going to ask this, but you brought it up, and now I am intrigued. So the abolitionist term that you just used, can you elaborate on what does that mean to have a world without jails? I mean, in an ideal world, no one's committing any crimes.
Yeah,
they would have to be put in jail. But I mean, there are people, who commit murder, who commit rape, who commit all these terrible atrocities, and they pose a danger to society. So it's not just a question about what's good for them, but what's good for the community. So how would that fit into a philosophy of abolitionism?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question, Rabbi. We lay out, well, let me just say first, my stance on abolition is primarily based on the model of incarceration in the United States, in which our prisons are really flooded with people who are not receiving the mental health services and who are in poverty. So, our jails and prisons in the United States are just essentially, I believe, filled with people who would be better served by other social structures. We, lay the framework for abolition to our students every semester. And at the end, they always say, what about the rapists? What about the murderers? What about this,
Right. I can't be the first one to...
No. And I don't, to be honest, I do not have a great answer for that. Maybe there will always be some, small component of the percentage of the population that needs to be detained like that.
Right. And this kind of brings me, this is almost more of a philosophical question, but, it could have practical import, which is, I think you've read Harry Potter in the past, or you've watched it at least.
Yeah.
Like I cheated. I only watched it. I didn't read it. Don't tell anybody. Now this is public information, so I'm going to be, I'm going to be exiled from society now. But I do remember, even in the movies, they didn't cut out that there are the 3 unforgivable curses, and that always, got my, the wheels turning in my head, and it's a real philosophical question. I'm sure in every religion, I'll just speak for Judaism, we have something called teshuvah, which means repentance. The idea that I could commit, virtually any sin, but if I go through the different conditions of repentance, I can renew myself and I could turn everything around. But I guess the question is, like, these high-level crimes that pose such a threat to society and did such terrible things to another person. And the question is, are these the people that the students are going to be interacting with in the jail? Is there a certain line that we draw? Do we say, it's one thing if you shoplifted, it's another thing if you murdered somebody in cold blood? Is there like a line that we draw at some point?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's the philosophical questions that we ask in class, right? Like, what is redemption and who is deserving? And you can imagine those conversations are so powerful when half of the class is marked by the crimes that they've committed. We try our best to make everyone equal, but half of the class is wearing the blues that they, make everyone wear in jail.
So it's very clear in the classroom who's coming from outside and who's on the inside.
Yeah, at least by dress. People's, otherwise are not really designated. You can kind of forget.
I had a small experience like this. So when I was a rabbinical student, myself and a friend, we went to Rikers Island, which for, the Lehigh Valley natives who are tuning in might not know, that's the major prison island right near LaGuardia in New York City. And we went there to fill in for the main chaplain during the holiday of Passover, which is the biblical holiday of freedom. And here we were in one of the worst jails probably in the nation. It's a perennial issue. There's a lot of issues documented there, and I'm not going to get into it right now. And we actually, because we can't drive on our holidays and on our Sabbaths, so we actually slept in the facilities for 2 nights straight. We weren't put in a jail cell. We were put in like a classroom thing, but it was probably pretty close in terms of quality to what a cell would be like.
Yeah.
But even when we were in those walls, it was very clear, I knew that 2 days later I was getting out of there.
Yeah.
But there's still a marked difference between the people who are on the inside and us who are just almost like, I'd like to think we came in sincerely to help, but it was almost like tourists, you know?
I mean, it is a privileged position to be able to leave, and we really grapple with that. But I think, who is worthy of redemption? People are only in jail if their sentence is 2 years or less, or if they're waiting to be sentenced. And so in that way, our Muhlenberg college students are not...
This is jail versus prison.
Jail versus prison.
So that's the distinction.
That's the distinction.
So you're not taking them into a prison, you're taking them into a jail, which is probably a little bit safer in nature.
Well...
or maybe not.
Well, let me say, it's less resourced than many prisons, and in that way, I think maybe it is less safe because it's less resourced, and so people are generally less happy.
Right.
But the crimes are lesser, unless, of course, you're waiting to be sentenced.
Well, that seems to be, you could fill this in for me. One of the issues with the bail system is I understand the reason for bail, which is we need to make sure you're actually going to show up for your court date. So we need something to anchor the person down to actually show up. But it just means that people who come from an economically disadvantaged background are automatically going to be put in jail even before they are actually, there's a verdict to confirm that they did anything wrong.
Exactly, yeah. And statistically, actually, cash bail doesn't make any difference in whether or not people show up for court. And so I think there's a lot of evidence to say we need to overhaul that system entirely. You can imagine if you have been charged with a crime and have to sit in jail for 6 weeks, you could lose your kids in that time. You could lose your job in that time. And I just wouldn't.
So even, right, so as long as they're accused and put in jail, even if ultimately they are exonerated, their life has been irrevocably changed in the interim. And that's something that they just can't get back. Wow, I never thought of it that way. There's another kind of philosophical question that comes up about jails, prisons, maybe both. I don't know if restorative justice is the correct term, but the idea also that going to a prison or to a jail can help, therapeutically and put the person on the right track. So after their sentence is done, they could come back out into the, real world, I guess we'll call it, and be able to be a more productive member of society. So that's kind of the construct I've heard, and I'm curious whether you buy it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's restorative justice or not.
Yeah, so restorative, I feel like there are two parts to this. Restorative justice is often applied in informal contexts, right? If there has been wrongdoing, but people don't want to take it to the official authorities, then they will fall on restorative or come back to restorative practices, which I do think are wonderful. Although they hinge on this theory of shame, essentially, which is that in a community, if you hear from your community members the way that your behavior has impacted them and feel potentially shame,
right,
that you won't do that again.
Right, there's a social pressure that's governing everything.
Right. So I have complicated feelings about that because I don't love the idea of shaming people. However, I do think that it's important to hear the consequences of your behavior, and I do like that there are alternatives to formal legal,
right. Now,
processes.
Do we have a sense of when people go into incarceration and then they come out of the incarceration, do they generally wind up being, being more law-abiding or less law-abiding?
Because that's the thing. People go in and out of prison in a process called recidivism, primarily because they are unable to meet the qualifications of parole or probation because it is so time-consuming. And most of the people who are incarcerated in jails are dealing with issues of poverty and addiction.
And nobody wants to hire them either because of their past. And this reminds me of Les Miserables. Does that get referenced in the course at all? I mean, that's like the whole story with, Jean Valjean, and he's always 24601. He'll always be, a prisoner. And that are you familiar with Les Mis?
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically like the whole theme of the musical.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, it was a book that another book I did not read. Okay, this one,
it's okay.
this one you got to forgive me for because it was in French originally and it's super long, so it's much tougher to read. If I couldn't read Harry Potter, I'm not going to read through the original Les Mis.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was kind of the whole theme of you had this guy Jean Valjean, and he said, "Look, I put in all these years of working as a slave. Don't I have a chance at redemption now?"
Right.
And it's a very, very powerful story.
Yeah. I mean, what I find is that the people that I meet in jail are some of the most intelligent, kind, empathetic people who have had real struggles in their lives. And often violence begets violence, right? If I have been traumatized through interpersonal violence in my life, it's often the strategy that I will turn to and, impact others negatively. And so, we're trying to offer solutions and alternatives through, showing them the potential for another way. But it is really hard to break out of cycles of poverty and addiction without real social support.
Right. It takes more than just a motivational speech to get their life around.
Yeah.
It needs real substantive support. I usually do this at the beginning of the interview, but now we're going to do the backup, which is I'd like to understand kind of what got you on this path. I mean, did a young Jess always imagine one day that she would become a librarian and then become the head librarian and then become a librarian who's involved in this inside out prison exchange program? Just tell me kind of if that's what you always envisioned you'd be doing.
Does it sound strange? Maybe it does. So I grew up in Lehigh Valley. I went to Emmaus High School and graduated in 2008. All it really took for me to consider librarianship was someone to suggest that I'd be good at it. I had initially considered being a journalist, but the workflow stressed me out a lot. And what I found is I really like talking to people. And so...
well, we're doing that right now.
Yeah.
But that's the funny thing because, help me maybe you'll smash a stereotype for us, because I always imagine librarians as just someone quietly in a corner organizing books according to the Dewey Decimal System, which I still remember that Arthur episode growing up where DW asks, "Who's Dewey?" Do you know Arthur's show?
Love
so there's a musical episode they do where having fun isn't hard when you got a library card.
That's
exactly.
Right.
So I mean that's we made sure to show that one to our kids. I mean that's just that's like a hallowed core memory over there.
Yeah.
But that's what I always imagine as a librarian, just kind of like someone quietly off to the corner organizing books, and that's literally all they do.
Sure.
So what do librarians actually do? What do you do? Which is, you said you're having conversations with people, which I didn't realize that was part of the job.
Yeah, it's most of the job.
Really?
Yeah. So I'm lucky because my job is instruction primarily. So I teach students how to do research in the social sciences. But then a big part of my job is supporting those students when they come to the library with their individual projects. So I get to sit down and have conversations with them about their curiosities. And the goal is not for me to project what I'm interested in on them, right? So it's a very, in school, we spend a lot of time talking about how to hold a reference interview, how to ask questions without being leading, to help people uncover their own intellectual curiosity.
Right. You don't want to impose onto them, you want to just facilitate their personal growth.
Yeah, and some of the strategies for research are really helpful in that. I teach them how to consult things like encyclopedias and reference sources to see what is generally known about something, and then work our way to the specifics. Yeah.
I mean, that's really, look, that's really important. And you get that one-on-one quality time with the students as they are developing and they're doing research. So that's really cool to know.
The work of the prison then also, I think it's important for students to understand that for people to have, like for evidence to be authoritative, it has to be constructed either through personal experience or study, or maybe through social position. Like our community will put someone forth as an authority. And then also it needs to be contextualized. So that's why the work of Inside Out is so interesting to me as a librarian, because we're not just bringing scholarly academic authority into the classroom, we're bringing that lived experience. And to bring those both together, actually, I think is a more powerful and interesting educational experience.
Absolutely. You're going beyond the theoretical, you're getting the real lived experience. So when you're not in the library or in the jail, and you have some free time, and you said you're a native in the Lehigh Valley. So like, what do you do with the free time that you get here? What do you enjoy doing in the Lehigh Valley?
Well, most of my social community and free time is spent.
I know you're working all summer here at the college, so maybe you don't get that much of it.
Yeah, no. Well, I also have a 6-year-old. So when I'm not momming or librarying, I play bass in a rock band. And
what kind of genre is this?
I would call it like a punk /
so we have an interview with Mayor Matt Turk coming up soon.
Yes, we have similar roots.
I was gonna say, have you met Mayor Matt yet?
Yes.
So for his State of the City address, it was all punk theme, and I said I'm more of a metal person than a punk person. I feel like punk was always like the younger sibling of heavy metal.
Yeah,
but,
sure. Yeah,
but
so not heavy metal. I would call it maybe more like harder singer-songwriter stuff. My husband writes all the music.
So you guys do like a group together?
Yeah. Our group is called Time Being.
Time Being. Where do you get that title from?
From the Ruth Ozeki book, Tale for a Time Being. Highly recommend.
Beyond my pay grade. I didn't even, as I'll reference for the third time in this interview, I have not read Harry Potter yet. So.
It's a lovely book, and really the idea is it's not like for the time being. It's a being that experiences time, and what does that mean?
Wow.
As far as philosophy.
Yeah. Look, we're dealing with a lot of philosophy today. Clearly, you're doing a lot of important work both within and outside the walls of Muhlenberg College and the jail as well, and in the general community. But I sometimes like to ask at the end of interviews, I like to call it Lehigh's Lost Legends because I like alliterations for some reason. And that's really highlighting people who are doing important work, but maybe they're not as well known. So is there either an individual or an institution or organization in the Lehigh Valley that you think is doing important work, but maybe doesn't get the recognition it deserves?
Yeah, I love this question because really the community, the organizing community in Allentown has really made me who I am. And much of the wisdom I've gained from that is from Camilla Green. Are you familiar with Camilla?
No, please tell us about her.
One day I hope everyone listening to this gets to meet Camilla one day. She is a educator and activist who's been organizing our community for racial and economic social justice for decades. She started teaching in New York City public schools, and really has taught me everything I know about facilitating conversations with communities that are distinctly different from each other, but offering the opportunity to get to know each other in compassionate ways.
Wow.
And she's in her 80s now.
Really?
Yeah.
So she has a probably a long, illustrious career of doing a lot of community work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, well we'll have to put her on the list of future people to interview, I suppose. Final question. I could only ask this for a little bit longer, which is we have the 250th anniversary of the United States of America coming up, and I'd like to know, in your librarian capacity, in the Inside Out capacity, in the U capacity, what does it mean to Jess Denke?
I feel like this has been kind of a failed experiment in egalitarianism. The United States has created narratives of equality and prosperity that are very easy to see through if you pay attention and you get up close. And, that is the work of Inside Out. It is creating proximity between people who may not otherwise have it. And you really can't understand the true challenges of being in poverty without getting close. And yeah, so.
I appreciate that, because many of the people who I ask this question to, they leave off with a very uplifting note.
I hate to be the one that's different.
No, but honesty is very important. And I think this is actually a unique perspective that most people did not give when I asked them this question. So it will definitely be food for thought for our listeners, and I am sure they will have replies to that. Ms. Jess Denke, thank you for your time, and I appreciate you joining me as I walk through the valley.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Thank you for joining me as I walk through the valley. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate and subscribe to our show. If you have questions or would like to book a live recording or have a speaking request, please email rabbi@sonsofisrael.net. This is Moshe Kurtz. I look forward to having you join me next time as I walk through the valley.